Thanks for having me. I interpret it as getting back to their prior guidance on their USD reserve. So if you recall, a couple quarters ago, they had a view that they were going to have, 2 to 3 years of dollar reserves, which would give them kind of a volatility buffer to keep paying dividends on their securities without having to sell Bitcoin. And for a couple different reasons, they ended up dipping down to about 6 months, and that was at a time when there's leverage built on top of one of their most popular security other than their common stock, which is STRC. It had that large depeg moment going way below their target price, and since then the company's come out with a board level decision to have at least 12 months of reserves unless the board allows otherwise. Currently they're back up to 17 months, and recently they announced that they were selling Bitcoin to pay some of their most recent dividends, which at least I interpret as not wanting to have their US dollar reserve dip again. So I think they're kind of rebuilding back to, we're going to see what the number actually is, but I think they're basically getting back to something more resembling their prior guidance from 6 months ago, and that includes being willing clearly to sell some Bitcoin when needed. It is a small percentage of their stack. The strategy owns something like 4% of Bitcoin, so it's large. It's large in and of itself. I wouldn't call it systemic, but it's large. The chairman obviously is extremely well known in the space, and he's well known outside of the space to a significant degree. So the combination of the social reach with the scale involved, it's a very large levered Bitcoin entity. So it's obviously a massive bellwether for the space. So when they're having problems with their securities or deviating from their guidance or deviating from their expectations, I think it's right for investors to pay attention to that and be concerned about that. They've shifted their model toward more of a bend not break model, meaning that very adverse scenarios tend to cause them issues. Obviously, they can, their securities can run into issues. They can bleed out Bitcoin. They can end up selling Bitcoin for less than they bought it. There's a bunch of things that can happen to them, but they generally don't have like a catastrophic failure mode other than extremely adverse scenarios. But yeah, I do think it makes sense, at least to some extent, to monitor strategy for the space, even though I wouldn't say it's indicative of the entire space.